To divide a decimal by a whole number, you simply have to bring the decimal point up into the quotient and then just do regular division. 6 into 13 is 2. 6 into 18 is 3. And we have no remainder. So our quotient is 23 hundredths. When we go to do number 8, we'll notice that when we bring our decimal up, 12 cannot fit into 3. Since 3 is a decimal place, we need to put a 0 in the quotient as a place marker. From there, we would just do our regular long division steps, 12 into 31. That will be our quotient. None of these have remainders, but as we move into the next lesson, we'll start encountering some problems that are going to have remainders, and we'll see what to do with them there. For example, in number 10, we're dividing a decimal into another decimal, and we have to move the decimal point in the divisor to make the divisor into a whole number before we can divide. Since we had to move it one place in the divisor, we have to move it one place also in the dividend. Once we do that, we can put our decimal in place and do our regular division steps. 5 into 8 is 1. 5 into 32 is 6. And as you see in this problem, we have a remainder. So to take care of the remainder, we'll add a 0 into the dividend, but then at this point we also have to bring the decimal up since the 0 is in the 10th place. We can bring the 0 down and divide 5 into 20. And there our remainder goes away. Sometimes when we're doing the division, the remainder doesn't go away and we have what's called a repeating decimal. As we'll see in number 15, we'll move the decimal over one place in the divisor, we move it over one place in the dividend. And then we do 45 into 50, and then 45 into 59. At this point we have a remainder, so we have to add a 0 in the dividend, bring our decimal point up since we're now in the 10th place, and bring the 0 down. Then we'll do 45 into 140. We still have a remainder, so we bring down another 0. 45 into 50 is 1. At this point, if we keep adding zeros and bringing them down, we're going to continue to get a 1 because 45 into 50 is again 1. This is what we call a repeating decimal. When we notice it's repeating, we stop and we put a bar over the repeating digit. In this lesson, we're going to be using division to solve some word problems, but we will have to decide what to do with the remainder and how to interpret the quotient. In number 1, the question's asking us how many belts can be made out of 6 5/10 meters of cord. Since 6 5/10 is the total amount of cording that she has, and she's cutting each belt into 625 thousandths of a meter pieces, we'll divide 625 thousandths into 6 5/10. We'll have to move the decimal 3 times in the divisor, so we have to move it 3 times in the dividend. We can place our zeros in the empty spots. Before we start to divide, we need to ask ourselves, does it make sense for her to make part of a belt? Since making part of a belt does not make sense, we know that we're not going to have a decimal in our answer. So we'll divide. And when we get to the part of having a remainder, we will have to decide what to do with that remainder. 625 can't fit into 250, so that's 0. So at this point, we have a remainder of 250. She can make 10 belts, but she has a piece of the cording left over. Since this piece of cording is not enough to make a whole nother belt, we will say that she can make only 10 belts. For number 2, we're asked how many packs of cups he will need. Since Julius is having a party for 136 people, he would need 136 cups. The cups come in packs of 24, so we will have to divide 24 into 136, which goes 5 times. That would give him 120 cups, but he would still have 16 more cups that he would need. So if he buys 5 packs of cups, he doesn't have enough for the people at his party. Again, we have to ask ourselves, does it make sense for him to buy part of a pack of cups? Since he can't buy part of a pack of cups, we can't have a decimal in our answer, and we have to decide what to do with this remainder. If he only buys 5 packs of cups, he will still have 16 people who will need cups at his party. So his only option is to buy 6 packs of cups. He has to buy 1 extra pack to accommodate the 16 extra people. For number 3, we're asked how long each piece of ribbon should be if Miranda has 29 25/100 meters of ribbon, and she needs to cut it into 13 equal-sized pieces for her balloons. Once again, we have to ask, does it make sense for her to have part of a meter of ribbon as her answer? Since we can have part of a meter as our answer, we will need the decimal in this quotient. 13 into 29 is 2. 13 into 32 is 2. And 13 into 65 is 5. So that means each piece of ribbon would be 2 25/100 meters long. To finish up our chapter, we're solving decimal equations. Just like with whole number equations, we're going to be doing the inverse operation, or the opposite operation. Since this is a subtraction equation, we will have to use addition. So we will add 2 3/10 to both sides of the equation. That cancels out the left side, and we're left with A. We bring our decimal down and add, and we get A equals 7 1/10. I do recommend doing the check work. If you put A in for 7 1/10, you should be able to subtract 2 3/10 and get 4 8/10, and that works. 6n means 6 times n, so to undo multiplication, we're going to have to divide. That cancels the 6's out, so we're left with n, but we have to divide the right side by 6 as well. So when we divide 6 into 8 4/10, we get 1 4/10. I do recommend doing the check work. If you put n in for, if you put 1 4/10 in for n and multiply that times 6, you should get 8 4/10. To solve a division equation like c divided by 4, we would have to do its opposite and multiply. So we're going to multiply both sides by 4. That cancels the 4's out on the left, so we have c equals, then we need to multiply 3 2/10 times 4. Put the decimal point in, and our answer is 12 8/10. To check, we would put 12 8/10 in for c and divide by 4. And that should give us 3 2/10. Did the steps a little out of order there. Number 4 is an addition equation. So to undo addition, we're going to have to subtract 2 49/100 from both sides. So we have x left on the right, and we need to make sure that we line up the decimal points over here on the left side. Since we have an extra space there, we'll add a 0, bring the decimal down, and subtract. To make sure our answer is correct, we'll put it into the equation and make sure it works. 2 49/100 plus x, which is 6 1/100, should add up to the 8 50/100 there.